the engagement has to be outcome driven. What does it mean is, these engagements should move the customer in their customer journey to the next stage. If it's not, it's probably not valuable, it's just relationship building, which is great, but we have an account team, and it's not just the CSM to maintain the relationship, right? When we did that, it was a huge change management exercise, because internally we have to align everybody to say that, yeah, we won't have a CSM on the ground anymore. So AE, you have to take up a different role. SC, you have to take up a different role. So it's easy to be presented. I think the biggest challenge was change management on the internal side. 90% of the customer, when you go back and say, hey, instead of this guy, that guy is your point of contact, they're fine. For them, they just need somebody to reach out to, and you can deliver the engagement. So the fear that we had from customer pushback, I think it was much less versus the internal dynamics that we had to go through. So if you are going to experiment in this model, I think the biggest thing is going to be an internal buy-in from the top of the leadership. Given the margin pressures and how you want to manage, they need to get aligned with this approach. Then it becomes easier to implement. That's it. That's the content I had. So any questions that I can answer?
All right.
How did I do on time? Good, 15 minutes. See?
Yeah,
I want people to get to lunch faster.
Apparently, you want lunch early. Okay. We have some questions here. What is an ideal CSM to customer ratio for strategic customers?
So we have always measured it based on ARR rather than number
what
of
customers. What is ARR?
Annual recurring revenue. So we generally have measured based on revenue than the number of customers. So for us, when we started, it was about 5 million per CSM, now about 8 million plus, right? So if we have a 20 million customer, you just have one CSM, right? And if you have 15 customer multiplied to 8 million, then you have 15. It's not necessarily the number, it's the size of the business. That's how we managed it.
Got it. Okay. A question around how do you manage the addition and removal of CS resources from accounts with the scaled model?
Yes. So we have experimented it with a little bit. So initially it was purely engagement oriented. What you have come to stabilize is, if you have an individual work on an engagement with a customer, we try to see as much continuity we can build. So if a CSM A worked with a CSM customer A for an engagement, there is a second engagement coming up. If the CSM A has a bandwidth available, probably try to deploy them. So you're kind of trying to mimic the assigned model, but using in the engagement model approach. That's at least the first approach to do, right? That way, at least there is a reduction in friction. The second is extreme level of documentation. So as you saw the whole engagement approach, there is a start and there is an end, and all of that gets documented and goes into Org62 system. So if somebody else is picking up, there is documentation, process notes, everything is available to make it seamless so that you don't show up to the customer without having any context. That's probably the second thing. And third, it's just hard. It's not like people just don't like to see new people showing up, but if you are managing to margin as if your board has promised, you have to go through that, and then customers will make that transition.
Okay, thank you. I had a question here about Slack automations. I personally upvoted that one because I
so that probably is a much more detailed conversation. I mean, one thing easiest is we own Slack, so it's much easier, right? We can, like Salesforce owns Slack, so we can sit with their engineering team and automate a bunch of things. But I realize I think Slack as a workflow tool works well. So for example, let's say I own retail and consumer goods customers. So there is a ask retail consumer goods CS whatever channel, right? Which has a workflow. If you're an AE, you go click on the workflow, and there are certain things that it asks, right? As it goes into the workflow, I have somebody called a triage manager within my team. They go through the details, and the response could be one of the three. Hey, it's a question, this is the answer, go and tell the customer, done, right? Second, hey, this is something CS doesn't do, but support does. So this is the point of contact, reach out to them. Third, yes, it's an engagement, I clicked it, I'm working on it, I'll connect with you back, and then this is how we start an engagement, right? So that's kind of a very simplistic level it works, and you can make it much more complex, if you want. But I think to begin with, that itself works. Just a Slack channel for people to, triage through workflow.
Got it. Okay, thank you. For smaller companies, how should we balance following CS tiers versus being high touch with all customers because every logo matters?
I'll tell you, I think it's based on what's your company's DNA at that point of time is. I think I will not make these slides 2 years back. We were fundamentally different, right? We were high touch CSM. The CSMs were comped on add-on ACV. We were 65-35 split. So we were all growth CSM, all hands on the deck, everybody going on. Now we are a $2 billion company. We are a fundamentally different company. The metrics are different. So what I will say is look at what your leadership cares about. If your leadership cares about growth and margins can wait, you don't have to go to this model. But start thinking about productizing your engagements, even if it is one-to-one, that, can you productize certain components of that engagement? So if a CSM works with a customer for a year, all the things they do, can 7 things be productized at one engagement? Because in future, that will help you to take the CSM out and still deliver the engagement, right? But you don't have to take the CSM out if that's not your focus. That's not your company's focus.